Hello again. Hello. And we're going to try this one more time. Hi again. So we just had some technical difficulties. Just going to look for our special guest here. Okay, there you are. Queer Making Collective. And it says connecting. Hey. Oh. Frozen.
Oh, so close.
See a face now. So close, so close. So for those of you that are just joining us, my name is Vivek Shraya, and I'm a board member of the Tegan and Sara Foundation, and we're just having some technical difficulties trying to reach Krista at Queer Making Collective. Now I can see you, but yeah, almost there, almost there. Don't know, I'm gonna send like Wi-Fi vibes to you. Are you on Wi-Fi right now, or?
Yeah, I can switch to
Data? I don't know. It's a signal. I can't, can you hear me right now? Krista? Audio out of sync. Okay, maybe I'm gonna push you out again, and then I'm gonna try and oh, there you are. Yay, okay, but we're not aligned.
oh,
No, okay. Says I'm out of sync now.
you're okay on my end?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is working. Okay, I'm gonna say hello, and then you're gonna say hello. Should we just try and make the best of this?
Sure.
Okay, so for those of you that are just joining us, it looks like we've been having some technical difficulties, but my name is Vivek Shraya, and like I said, I'm a board member at the Tegan and Sara of the Tegan and Sara Foundation. It's been an incredible privilege to work with artists and people who I really admire, and one of the things the foundation decided to do earlier this year is community grants to support artists and organizations who are doing amazing work to support queer communities. And one of our amazing, the people that we've been able to, or the organizations that we've been able to give funding to is the Queer Making Collective Community. I was like trying to say that 3 times fast. Queer Making Collective Community, Queer Making Collective Community, Queer Making Collective Community. Yes, and we're going to talk to Krista today, who is one of the founders. So Krista, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for
can you
having me.
please tell us, yay, can you tell us a little bit about you and a bit about how you're doing during this time?
Yeah. So I'm doing okay. I'm really grateful to be in a place that has a relatively low instance of COVID, and also in a place that I have green space in my yard. So I'm doing a lot of gardening and making right now.
Nice, just like Sara.
Yeah. I know, I keep watching the Instagram.
And so, I mean, it's pretty addictive. They need their own TV show. Okay, so you are one of the founders, or are you the founder of Queer Making Collective
Yeah.
Community?
Yeah.
And so can you tell us like when you started this organization and like what prompted you to start the organization, and yeah, like just sort of the genesis of the organization?
Yeah. So we're relatively new. So very much an ad hoc collective based in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. We've been around like for only about a year, but really rooted in this desire to use community arts as a way to engage the queer community locally, hold space for queer makers and queer artists, recognizing that there's so many amazingly talented folks out there, and wanting to create space where folks can feel comfortable interacting with arts, and also just like casual space that isn't alcohol centered but is queer friendly.
I mean, I feel like that's so important. I feel like that's one of the things, especially when I was first coming out in Edmonton, which is bigger than Sault Ste. Marie, but I don't know how much bigger. And I remember just being like, where do gay people go if we don't want to drink? And so, you know, reading more about your organization, I was like, oh man, like I would have loved to like, well, my crafting skills are kind of terrible, but I love
That's
that
totally
you're
fine.
providing. There's no barometer of
No,
crafting skills.
no judgment.
Is there like a crafting test you have to pass to join the organization?
No, not at all.
How
And
fast
I'd
can
say
you knit?
even
How
for
fast
me,
can you
like
knit?
I'm a relatively new person to crafting. Like probably within the past 5 years, I've tried like knitting and a bunch of fiber crafts and they just didn't jive for me. And then I found embroidery and kind of fell in love. So, and it's, you know, just a space where folks can hang out and make stuff. Or
I mean,
one of,
sorry, you mentioned embroidery, and I noticed in the write-up you talk about one of the things that the program you're going to be working on, the queer crafting circles, is radical embroidery. Can you tell us what radical embroidery is?
yeah. So I think one of the interesting things about embroidery is that it's very much like historically rooted as like a women's craft or a female domestic labor. And so I think there's a lot of potential in subverting that form to send very positive messages for the queer community that are gender affirming. I swear a lot in my embroidery, and yeah, that's what I consider radical embroidery. It's pushing boundaries with a very traditional craft.
Nice, nice. And I love that you gave us the history of embroidery because
Mhm.
you're also a historian, which I find really fascinating, this sort of like juxtaposition of a historian and craft maker. So why the interest in history? Like what do you think is, why do you think you've been drawn to history?
Yeah, so my background is really as a public historian, which deals with making history accessible to the general public. So, like museums and archives, historical sites. And what draws me to that is this idea that, you know, you can create a community around history. It's part of forming an identity, but also that there's so many stories to be told out there. And every place, every person has a story. And I really feel that there should be space to tell those stories.
Beautiful. And when you, I mean, one of the things I'm constantly curious about is like, I feel like the history that gets told about queer communities is often like US based. And if it's Canadian, it's like Toronto based. And so
Mhm.
like, what are, for those of us that like don't know very much about Sault Ste. Marie, like, are there any interesting, or what might be some of the most interesting queer historical facts that you've come across in
Wow.
at Sault Ste. Marie in particular? I'd be really curious to know about that.
That's a good question. And I think you're definitely right. Like a lot of queer history is US based, or if you get Canadian, you might get the Toronto bath raids. You don't really get small communities or rural communities, even though there's sometimes really rich queer history. But I think finding that history, you have to talk to people. And it's talking to like queer elders, queer ancestors, and building intergenerational communities is how you get those stories or be able to hear them. In the Sioux, I know it seems
The
fairly
Sioux,
recent.
the Sioux,
Sioux, yeah.
the Sioux. My partner, I was like, my partner is like more savvy with this stuff, and he was like, "It's called the Sioux, okay? Don't go on fucking Instagram Live and say Sault Ste. Marie," which I almost did. So,
Yeah.
sorry, you were saying in the
Yeah,
Sioux.
no worries. In the Sioux, our first Pride celebration was in 2014, and it really rallied around the Olympics that year when it was in Russia that year, and thinking about the queer athletes that were being, you know, unsafe
Wow,
or
that's
that
like
were
such an
unsafe in
interesting
that space.
juxtaposition. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know that seems really recent that it's 2014. You know, Pride has existed in some communities for decades at this point. But in Northern Ontario, there's a lot of places that it doesn't exist or it's in its first or second year. So the fact that, you know, it's been here for whatever the math is from 2014 to now, I think is pretty special.
Yeah, that's
And I think
incredible.
the other kind of cool things is seeing how different community groups have really stepped up to the plate at different times. They see a need and they create a space or they create programming for a queer community or for queer youth, for example. There's a couple different organizations locally that do that work.
That's amazing too, because I think one of the like assumptions we make too about like smaller places is that there's like maybe only one queer organization, if that. And like you've already referenced like a bunch. Like, do you want to shout out or highlight some of the other work that's happening
Yeah.
in the
So
Sioux?
yeah, in the Sioux. There's a couple of really great organizations. So the Pride Project works with queer youth locally, as well as Rainbow Club is also for youth, creating space and programming that's really dedicated for youth who are questioning or who are queer and their allies. Likewise, my day job is working at the local university, and there's a really active queer coffee club there,
Oh,
which is pretty
cool.
amazing. And locally, there's also a trans coffee club. So a little bit of everything, which is
Oh my
nice. Yeah.
God. I want the Buy Coffee Club.
Me too.
Um, so for those of you that are just joining us, my name is Vivek Shraya, and I'm here with Krista from the Queer Making Collective community, who is one of the wonderful organizations that the Tegan and Sara Foundation is supporting with a community grant. And so I'm curious how you're finding the ability to work on your project right now, the one that you submitted the grant for, and like how like COVID has maybe like reshaped what you've imagined, or just like your ability to craft during this time.
Yeah. So I think around like the ability to craft in this time, it really ebbs and flows pretty greatly. Like there's some times where I'm really into that, other times I just don't have the energy, and I think that's totally okay. Some of the programming that we're doing that's around the grant funded project is really creating virtual crafting spaces. So Wednesday evenings in June, we're going to do a drop-in for folks to craft. But
And do you have to be in Sault Ste. Marie to drop
no,
in?
we're opening those ones to everybody.
Okay, that's pretty
Yeah,
awesome. So for
so
those of you that are listening and who are like interested in crafting, like there's going to be virtual crafting
craft
opportunities.
meetups, be
Yeah.
gay and do crafts. Um, One of my collaborators said that to me earlier today. I was like, yeah, that's really reasonable. We're also partnering with Rainbow Club that I mentioned earlier to do a youth-specific, Sault Ste. Marie-specific crafting sessions. So which I think is really cool. And one of the things that we've been thinking about is really the importance of like partnership during this time, because so many folks are struggling with like insecure funding and just resources and energy levels. So trying to work together to make the most of what we have.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think it's so important for us to be connecting to each other. Although I totally hear what you're saying in terms of like some days having the momentum and energy to create work or be productive, and other days being like, I just don't have the capacity. So I think it's great that you're able to sort of listen to that and also still community organize. Because right now the idea of like organizing more than like brushing my teeth in the morning feels pretty impossible. So kudos to
Yeah.
you.
Well, thank you.
So how can like if anyone here's I mean a lot of people, it looks like they're commenting, are interested, how might people find out more about Queer Making Collective community and the virtual craft sessions that you're going to be having in July? I know that obviously people can follow you on Instagram, but is there anything else
Yeah.
that people can
So I
do?
think Instagram's probably the best way. If you have specific questions, you can send us a direct message on Instagram, but all of our events are being posted on there, as well as like the Zoom links and everything. We'll add to that too. So that's
Someone
probably
wants
the
to
best.
know if those on your wall, if those are examples of radical embroidery.
Some of them are flowers, and some are Doctor Who inspired. But I can grab a couple if you would
Okay,
like
I
to
want to grab
see.
something too. Let's grab
Yeah.
something.
Okay.
Everyone disappeared. I'm still here. Okay, great. And so did you make these?
Yeah, I did. So there's one.
Okay, and that says fuck gender roles.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That one says resist, like a fist.
Resist.
And that one's a nice
Beautiful. Queer AF. Oh my
AF.
God,
So,
oh my God, I was going to be an old person and be like, queer AF. Okay, so this, what about this? Is this
nice.
radical?
Yes.
I didn't come up with this, but there's an amazing, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to post this on, maybe I'll post it on my stories after, but they do this, I think it's cross stitch though. Maybe you would know more than me.
It's hard to see from here, but yeah.
Anyways, they are based here in Calgary, and they do like beautiful, like I'm gonna say cross stitch / embroidery.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get fired from the board after this because I just don't know anything. We had one more question, so maybe before we wrap up, somebody wanted to know about like right now during this time, if there's content that you or artists or TV shows or movies or music, anything like that, that's like really inspiring you, really motivating you, really comforting you during the pandemic. Would love if you could share that.
Yeah. So comfort, I love British detective shows, which is
Oh
really
my God.
cheesy, but they're
So
so
like Killing
comfortable.
Eve?
No, like Midsummer Murders, which is like a village where bad things happen, but it's still like wholesome and they drink tea all the time.
Okay, so kind of like Downton Abbey, maybe? No?
Yes,
Yes? No?
Downton Abbey,
Okay.
but with mysteries in it. Likewise, I've just recently fell into the rabbit hole of reading a bunch of queer romance books that are kind of nice and heartwarming. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Any titles in particular you've read?
I'm not going to be able to think of them off the top of my
No?
head.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. And I think in terms of inspiration for art, I really, I love Instagram for following artists that I'm in love with. There's a few that are fiber artists that I love. Noah_Weaves is one that's located in Western Canada, and I just bought one of their pieces and it's gorgeous. Likewise, if folks want to follow Erin Cosmo on Instagram, their tag is land glitter, and they use fish scales in a lot of their work.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
yeah, fish scales, and there's a lot of like tea related content. They're an amazing Métis artist that I highly recommend to folks. Oh,
Not
queer
this,
tea.
but
I'm also drinking tea, so yeah.
Okay, so someone's asking here, if we want to get into queer crafting, where should we start?
Make things? No, I'd say
Well, where did
find.
you start? Where did you
Where
start?
did I start? I think for me, part of it was trying to find something that I was interested in. So I did do like a couple local workshops that were either knitting, crocheting, things like that, and it just wasn't my jam. And so I just kept trying crafts until I found something that felt good. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there. That's actually how I learned how to embroidery, or how to
Okay.
embroider, was just by watching YouTube videos. So if there's a craft you're interested in, I'd say Google it and try and go from there.
I mean, I really relate to that. Like, I feel like even like things like filmmaking, I should never say this as someone who works at a university, but I'm always like, you don't need us. You can just
I
Google it.
also work at a university and agree.
Yeah, so I'm just like, Google how to do things, because like that's how I've learned how to do so many things. Anyways, is there anything else you want to share with us? I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Anything else you want to say about the collective, or for people who are interested, or anything else that I didn't ask you?
No, I think I'm good. We're just so grateful for the support from Tegan and Sara Foundation, and super happy to be able to do this work.
Well, thank you so much for applying and like doing the work that you're doing. I mean, we can only do the work that we're doing because of artists like you. And like I said, so many of us right now are looking to people like you and the work that you're doing to stay motivated, to stay engaged, to feel some semblance of normalcy. So like, yeah, and especially as someone who grew up like in a smaller city, I have so much gratitude for people who like stay in the small city and not move, and like really try to make the community in these cities better. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And if there's anything else we can do to support you, please let us know. And thank you to everyone who tuned in.
Yeah, thank you so much.
See you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.